Hello guys, once again it's Matt, and today we have another video. Thank you all the members, all the patrons. Make sure to subscribe and let's get into it, guys. So today we are going to talk about AIM-9s and do kind of a Tech 3 video that I normally do, but with AIM-9 missiles. So I already did with the Sparrows and I think with AIM-120s, I have to check, but still, or I think I'm supposed to do it, I don't remember exactly, but still, today we're going to talk about the AIM-9s. The AIM-9s that we have in game, and the AIM-9s that we're going to see in the future, the AIM-9s that can be added or not, okay? So let's just hop right into it. We start obviously with the AIM-9B. It's a missile that is already in the game. It is its initial production model. It's limited to 10 Gs, very slow, short range. We have also the AIM-9F, or in the game is called the AIM-9B FGW2, which is an upgraded model made in Germany, but it has pretty much the same stats in game to the, pretty much, I'm not saying it's the same, but it's pretty much the same stats as the normal AIM-9B. This was the initial model of the AIM-9. Obviously, we already know and have this missile for a very long time. Here are some options of aircraft that could receive these missiles. You know, the F-4B in the future can be added with it. F-111, you know, the F-100D already have some of the aircraft using those as well, right? And then afterwards, this was in the late 50s, early 60s, right? In the mid 60s to late 60s, basically they entered in service with one missile for the Navy, one missile for the Air Force. So we have the AIM-9E for the Air Force and the D for the Navy. So the E for the Air Force was basically the same air missile as this one, but it had some minor upgrades that made a ton of difference. You know, the major thing is that it had better aerodynamics in the missile itself, making it go faster, which helps a lot. And it had a better seeker. So although it turns the same, it has a better seeker with a better FOV and everything like that to actually hit targets. So the main thing is that the aerodynamics are a little bit better, so it's a faster missile than the AIM-9B. And of course the D variant was a complete redesign basically of it. It's a Navy upgraded version from the late 60s as well, mid to late 60s too. It had more Gs. This was the first one that actually got more Gs, around 18. And it had a new engine, which is one of the main things about it, making it a lot better than the B variant and a lot better than the E variant in the range capability of this missile. And of course, it had a better seeker as well. So overall, just a way better missile, better aerodynamics, better engine, better seeker, everything like that, turning 18 Gs, right? Of course, the aircraft that can receive these depends on the type of branch that the aircraft is. So for example, in the Navy, as you can see over here, we have the F-8E, the F-8U2 in the game already. And in the Air Force, we have the F-4C, the F-5, the F-111D, A-4E. So it depends on if it's the Air Force or the Navy, it will use one or the other, in theory at least. Doesn't mean that they have it in the game. But in the early 70s, they made upgrade to these two models. So for the Navy, they made the AIM-9G, which was basically the same as the D, but it had the SEAM, which is basically or I think it's called like that, SEAM, right? Which is a system where you could basically use the radar or even other systems to slave the missile. And the seeker was a little bit better as well. So with that, you actually had a better, larger FOV for you to do some type of interception shots, you know. So it does help a little bit, and it is a very interesting missile. Energy turning capability the same as the D, but the seeker is a tiny bit better. Okay, and the AIM-9J, which was basically the upgrade for the Air Force from the 9E, had another better aerodynamics upgrade to it, having the new fins as you see over here. The nose, everything like that is basically the same, but having better fins, making it turn 20 Gs. Also, it had a better seeker, so we could lock more easily people and stuff. And of course we have even some upgrades to the original J. So we have the J, P, and N, obviously, they are minor upgrades to the original J. I'm not gonna mention too much around them, but we do have all of them in the game, okay? We do have technically the N variant, but it's not added yet, I don't think. It's in the files, but not added, but it would be basically the same as the J, and also in the game at least. And in the P variant as well, it's basically more of an exported model initially as the P3 that it's already in the game. But of course, we have the P4 and the P5 that could be added, which basically use the AIM-9L and AIM-9M technologies in the AIM-9J, right? So we're going to talk about the 9L and M later. So just remember that the P4 and P5 are basically AIM-9Js that turn 20Gs but have all aspect capability and some forms of IRCCMs, okay? So yeah, these were the early 70 upgrades to the original Air Force and Navy variants. Of course, the aircraft can use this. Depends on the country. We are only looking at the US over here, for example, but AV-8s, a lot of countries use this missile. The British especially, they use this missile. The AIM-9J is more for the US, but the Ps are used in many countries as well. But as you see, some of the Air Force aircraft that could use it. For example, the initial F-16As from 1976 used the AIM-9Js initially until the AIM-9L became a major missile in the USAF, right? In the late 70s. So yeah, very cool. After that, we had still we were talking about upgrades to the J, right? We had one upgrade to the G as well. The latest model of this lineup of missiles. It would be basically just an upgraded G model. We have that in the F-14A, for example, in the F-4J and stuff. So I'm pretty sure. I don't remember. I think it's only in the 14, but still, it is basically a G model that has more reliability and a better track rate. It doesn't change too much. Still, I mean, turns 18 Gs the same as the other ones, but it is just more reliable and it has a better tracking rate. So it could, in theory, change directions a little bit more quickly, but in the game, it's not really feelable. It's not a big difference anyway from the G, but yeah. And a fun fact about this missile is that it was actually created to increase the reliability problems that the Navy aircraft were having in Vietnam due to the hard landings. You know, the hard landings on a carrier made so that the G and the D variants before that would have some problems in performance, right? So the H was supposed to fix those problems of reliability due to that. And then, of course, we have the almighty AIM-9L. The AIM-9L would be, you know, the definition of a joint venture between the Navy and the USAF, right? The Lima was developed to be the ultimate AIM-9. You know, at the time. From the late 70s, I think he entered in service or production in 1978. It was meant to be used in high maneuvering targets, just like the AIM-9J, but even more. But also attacking high-speed targets. So it would have a better engine for more energy in turns, but also to catch targets that are further away from you. Also, these meant new electronics and other guidance systems, and together with a new aerodynamic system with the new canards over here, it meant that it could turn 30 Gs and even have an all-aspect capability, a proper all-aspect capability, and also a limited flare resistance situation, right? It's not a proper IRCCM yet, but it is an initial form of flare resistance, okay? Of course, the aircraft that we can see having it and already have it are the aircraft that got it. The F-14B, the F-16s, of course. But of course, there are some other additions. The A-7E, for example, could use this. The F-111F, if it's ever added. The F-4s, they could use this, like the F-4S, for example. But also the F-4G, if it's ever added. So it's a missile that everybody loves. It's a great missile. I love this thing. And yeah, the range on it is amazing. Of course, now we have the AIM-9M, but still, it is one of the best missiles in the game still. Okay? And talking about the AIM-9M, this is the first one for the IRCCM line. So in the 80s, so we moved from the 50s to the 60s to the 60s, right? To the 70s, and then to the late 70s. I mean, this is like 1975, if I'm not mistaken, 74, and this would be a little bit earlier, I think, but this would be 1978. And the AIM-9M, we're talking about the block 1 to 3 over here, the initial variant, that is the variant that we have in the game, okay? This is from 1982, if I'm not mistaken, so early 80s. The mic was basically developed to be an upgrade to the Lima variant. From the early 80s, as I said, with its initial blocks, you would have the same turning as the Lima, so 30 Gs. So it doesn't have 35, it is 30 Gs, but it would have a smokeless engine, having the same energy as the Lima in the engine capability. But the thing is that it had a new type of technology to avoid flares, the proper IRCCM that we have right now. So this is the missile that we have in the game right now. Of course, here are the list of aircraft in the US Tech 3 that could receive these things. It is a very good missile. It has the same drawbacks as the AIM-9L, you know. It's a slower acceleration missile compared to something like the R-73 and even R-60M. So the major drawback about it is that it doesn't have the maximum amount of energy quick, you know. So that means that it takes a little bit of time to get to the target. It takes a little bit of time to start turning very well, but when it does, it's an amazing missile. It's kind of a jack of all trades. It's not a missile made for long range. It's not a missile made for short, very short range, like direct turns of 30, 40, 50 Gs, right? It's a missile that it's in the middle there. So, and with its IRCCM, unsuspected targets can be destroyed very, very easily with it. So, yeah, very, very good missile right now. Of course, in the IRCCM line, we have these 3 missiles that we need to talk about. The AIM-9G Swift, the AIM-9L Swift, and the AIM-9LI. So, these are basically upgrades to missiles from the UK and Germany that they used to be on par with the IRCCM of the AIM-9M. Okay, so the British, I don't know if it was like fully in service, but they used these missiles, I'm pretty sure, in the Falklands War. I'm pretty sure, 99% sure. But yeah, basically it is an AIM-9G or AIM-9L with an upgrade to the IRCCM of it, or to the seeker of it, making them a lot better in the all aspect capability, and also having a way better IRCCM on the same level as the AIM-9M. This could be added to the Harriers, for example, to the Jaguar, and especially for the Phantom FGRs, you know, FGs or FGRs, you know, the Phantoms, the British Phantoms. This would be very, very cool to see. It would be very different. An AIM-9G would still turn 18 Gs, but it would have an IRCCM, so it would be very different and cool. And the AIM-9L would be very similar to the M. And of course, we have the 9LI, which is basically the same level of upgrade, but done in Germany for the AIM-9Ls that they had. So the Tornadoes, the Typhoons, the F4F ICEs, and everything like that could use the AIM-9L with the IRCCM of an AIM-9M over here. They would still have the same smoke. The performance would still be 30 Gs in the case of the L and 18 for the G, but you would have this upgrade to the capabilities of the seeker, right? And then we go a little bit further to the late 80s, early 90s here. I'm not gonna get too much into this, but these are the late models of the AIM-9Ms, okay? The fact that you need to know is that the 5, the 7, and the 9 are all Air Force missiles, okay? And the 4, the 6, and the 8 and 10 are Navy missiles. So these are the aircraft that could use these missiles, and these are the aircraft that could use these missiles. I'm not gonna go into every single like factor about all of these missiles because there are so many of them. But the fact that you need to know is that progressively it should be coming from this thing, 30 Gs, IRCCM that you see right now, nothing like crazy amazing, but nothing bad as well. Same level of energy as this one, as the Lima and everything like that. To progressively to the late models, which would have 35 Gs, so it would turn better. It would have a little bit more of an efficient engine. It's hard to know if it actually had more delta V, but it would have a more efficient engine in general. and better seekers, better IRCCMs. So in general, it depends on what Gaijin wants, but I think they just should jump for the latest model and just add the missiles. I mean, they're all kinda interchangeable from one another, and depends on what they want. So for example, if the F-16C from 1991 is added and another one from 2010 is added, for example, if that's the case, we will see a difference in these two missiles. A little bit more turn, a little bit more engine, a little bit more you know? So it depends on what Gaijin wants, but it's just to show that there are better AIM-9s out there, okay? Even the aircraft that are already added to the game could receive these missiles. It's just that right now, I'm pretty sure, I'm glad actually, the AIM-9M that we have in game, which is basically one of the initial ones, is already enough, you know, but in the future, when things get a little bit more OP, maybe in the missiles, before we get to the 9Xs and stuff, the later 9Ms could be added, okay? And then, of course, we have the 9Xs, which would be the literal ultimate AIM-9, okay? It is the AIM-9 that it's being used right now by the US military and many others as well. But the thing is that you have to understand that the 9X, let's talk about especially the X1 over here, is one of the latest models, obviously. But the thing is that it started production or service in the early 2000s. So it's a very late missile. We're not gonna see this missile for a while, I think, in my opinion. It has basically the same engine, warhead, and some other minor things as the mics, but everything else is basically different. So it has a complete redesign aerodynamically. So it has a new IR FPA seeker, so basically an imaging seeker, a proper image, like a camera, you know. So way better IRCCM due to that. Really, really hard to avoid, at least in theory, to avoid with it, with flares against it, right? It has thrust vectoring systems, so of course, just like the R-73, so it's amazing at short range as well. And it has the capability of around 60 Gs in theory as well. I mean, since most of these informations are classified, we cannot know for sure, but obviously we can kind of have a guess. So it should be around 35 Gs on these things, and then a jump to 60 or something like that. And it has the capability of being slaved to an HMD to a 90-degree off-bore shot. At least this is the confirmed numbers that we have in unclassified stuff, right? We have the Block 2 and Block 2 Plus. Obviously, they are upgrades to the original ones. Of course, these are the aircraft that can use these missiles, and there are other aircraft as well. It doesn't mean that it's only these ones, just for you to know. It depends on what Gaijin wants to do with balance, okay? But anyway, from the mid-2010s, basically, it is a model that they particularly did one thing with it, which is just the LOAL, right? The lock-on after launch. With data link. So technically this missile could do the 180 off-bore shots, okay? Specially made for the F-35 and F-22. But it's really, really hard to find information. This missile was actually used, I mean, it's just getting into service, but, you know, it was already used on an Su-22 in Syria. It missed the target. There is even videos about that, which is quite interesting to see that there are already videos about these things. And of course, the aircraft managed to destroy the target afterwards, after it missed with the AIM-9X, shooting at AIM-120. So I don't know what happened there, if it was, they say it was like a maintenance problem or something like that. But yeah, no matter what, it is an amazing missile. And we have the Block 3, which would be the latest model. It was in development until 2022, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a very, very new model of the missile. So we barely know anything about it. The only thing that we can know for sure is that they are trying to make this missile have more range than the original ones, 20% or something like that, so that it has a capability similar to something like an R-27ET. You know, of being a IR long-range missile or something like that, like a Mika or something like that, to support the AIM-120s as well. in the IR guidance. So it's basically the same missile, but with that capability. So lock on after launch and everything like that, 60 Gs as well. There are some drawbacks between these two, according to some stuff, but I'm not gonna get too much into it because it's too classified. And yeah, guys. So basically, these are the AIM-9s. I think the big picture that we have to take from this is that these ones should be added right now. I think, like right now. And AIM-9Ms could get better in the future with better Gs and better engines and better stuff. And that 9X will be the honest like answer in the short range engagements to the R-73. You know, of course, it's not like the AIM-9M is a bad missile, but I mean, the AIM-9X is the missile to answer the R-73, right? So once this thing is added, it's going to be scary. Of course, other nations have other things. The R-73M, R-74, the Mikas, and all sorts of other missiles that are very, very cool as well. But the 9X should be one of those on the top, you know? While the AIM-9M will be kind of still a jack of all trades, you know? On the sense of not being amazing at one thing, but being pretty good at everything else. Like, an AIM-9X put that to another level, you know? It's a jack of all trades that is actually great at everything. So it's kind of scary. But anyway, this is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Of course, as I said, there are other missiles out there, but these are the main ones that I wanted to talk about. Okay? See you guys on the next one, and bye.